Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Euronews correspondent Francois CHIGNAC.
Bonjour à tous.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here today on the third day of this New York Forum Africa. I'm going to have the pleasure this morning of talking with Jean-Sebastien DECAUX, who is going to share his experiences with us on the mobile phone, and also this space in which you people have been evolving, and you're going to be involving so much more tomorrow. So this is a group that is present on 5 different continents. These are 3 different brothers who have been developing their group at an international level. And it's especially the story of Mr. DECAUX, who began quite a while ago, who became a world industrially known, well-known group, and of course, who have revolutionized the space, the urban space, and urban publicity. And so we were talking together yesterday evening, and you said that you have established today different similitudes between São Paulo and Brazil, where we're going to have the World Football Cup, and the city of Libreville here in Gabon. And 48 hours ago, when you came you arrived here in Libreville, and you were coming to the center here for the New York Forum Africa, you said that there were a lot of similitudes between those 2 cities. And so the mayor in São Paulo decided to begin a urban publicity policy. He decided to do away visually with this type of publicity that was in signs of posters and so on. And this is when your group came into the city. And so what exactly are the different similitudes that you're talking about between Libreville and São Paulo? Well, first of all, Francois, I'd like to thank Richard and Cecilia Atias for this opportunity they've given me to talk about the urban space. And in fact, it's interesting to talk about this space. Even though it's not perfect, I'd like to talk to you about what's been happening in São Paulo and what's now happening in Libreville. Libreville, like other cities in Africa, have suffered from a certain pollution, visual pollution in terms of publicity, which is not only harmonious with what should be happening. And of course, this is because of all the different publicity posters. And in São Paulo, they decided in 2007, as you've already decided here in Libreville, to simply do away with all these different panels because they could not decide between what was legal and what was illegal. And so for 3 years, there is not even 1 centimeter of in this city of 11 million inhabitants in São Paulo. And so this is now a very radical change. And of course, you have begun to do this in Libreville. And so the idea is to have a certain political willingness in order to carry out this policy. And of course, all the different publicity posters that were set up here in Libreville, they were not illegal or polluting. But of course, what is the problem? The problem is to go ahead with the policy, and in the view of the authorities is to improve the city and to bring new products and new functionalities to the citizens, new ways of communicating to clients of publicity, and to make Libreville a more attractive city, and to invite people to have better forms of publicity, as that would be more attractive for the city. And of course, this gives us interesting stakes and challenges to accept. And so I hope that Libreville will be inspired by this policy. In terms of the inspiration, what are the different stakes that we might consider, and to allow other cities to reconsider their publicity space in the different urban centers? The first thing, of course, are the basic services in any city. If it's a South African city or an African city, I think that the urban centers have to simply cover the urban needs, such as maintenance, cleanliness, security, orientation, in other words, where to go to different places, communication between the citizens and the authorities, and different things that should be improved here or there, and which should be set up. And of course, you have the numeric and digitalization of the cities. And we've talked about this before. That is to say, the connectivity, in other words, publicity on different electronic screens. And then, of course, we should have intelligent cities. And what we have already seen in the first day of our meeting on Friday we are in competition on the different continents, but also between the different cities. And for instance, the cities are using these different intelligence systems. They're using their intelligent smart systems and try to bring innovative solutions and different forms of intelligence to their cities for the consumers and the citizens, but also for the visitors. And so it's very interesting, and we think that Libreville is going to be undertaking, like other African cities, in this intelligent urban effort. And at the level of globalization, there are different companies here in Africa which are bringing these different intelligent cities at a zero cost structure. And so this is a model that exists, and this is what we are proposing. Now, what are you talking about when you say digitalization? You mean to say that, for instance, like in Chicago, the authorities can directly talk to the citizens? Yes, well, Americans are very often pragmatic, and the mayor of Chicago is a perfect example of American pragmatism. And for instance, the traditional posters is the oldest type of media that exists. In other words, if it is a panel for publicity, it will remain so. But myself in Chicago, and this is my home city, I'm going to have a network of posters in my city, which is going to be free of charge, and which it's going to be a new form, an innovative form of publicity in real time. In other words, it's not going to be the type that existed 50 years ago in paper form. In other words, he has succeeded using different funds coming from the private sector. He's had 35 different panels, which are 100% digital, and he has his own network, which is being paid by the clients. And of course, these clients are very happy to be able to communicate to their products and these different innovative support system. And this is what we call shared intelligence between the public and private sectors and the different brands. And as this is an example that is adaptable to Libreville tomorrow, or in Johannesburg or Kenya tomorrow, with a specificity in terms of the African urban situation. But do you think we can bring something in from Chicago and bring it to the African continent? Absolutely. Well, yes, of course, I hope so, because we're working on it. And today, of course, what we have it's what we already have in Nairobi and Johannesburg. We have a lot of pollution, this publicity pollution, which is a loss in receipts for the cities and for the public authorities, because you just allow people to do whatever they want. And people are setting up a lot of illegal publicities. And so what we need to do is to talk about the fundamental needs. Our group now, for instance, survives only because of publicity. And we have, for instance, revenues that come from publicity, but we also deliver and we develop services, for instance, public toilets in the cities, and we also have public information coming from the governments. And so I think that we have a need for this sort of a service in the African cities, and I think we could improve on what exists already. And I think that what happened in Sao Paulo is that 70% of the people, they found that this new system was very good, that there should not be just pure publicity being set up. It's only being set up at the public authorities today. And so, in fact, what is happening now is that we have smaller support systems that are attached directly to the public authorities, and now they're giving direct public services through the public authorities. I believe it's a win-win situation. We're meeting the basic needs of the city. And I can see that here in Africa, you're also making huge leaps of progress in terms of the digital world. And so I think that we have not yet even proposed this new system in Europe. In Europe, they're still using the paper system. And so perhaps you can have a less global approach than Google. Do you think, for instance, maybe you have an approach which would be a little bit less global? Because after all, Google, they do not respect the local specificities. Well, yes, we think that we're a bit paranoid, in terms of being too global. But because here we have Richard Atias, who has a view on the different publicity systems. And so we're a little bit paranoid about just applying systems from outside of Africa to what is existing here. And so I think one of the main threats of our system is Google. For instance, you have 400 billion in the stock market, and they have a model that touches upon all the different media systems. And we don't use and buy the press or the radio, the television services as before. And so now, if we have the fifth, screen in the different urban centers, whether it's the tablet or the smartphones. We are going, compared to Google, we're going to have the materialization, because Google is in the dematerialization, and we're working towards the materialization of our products. And in your cities, you have a content, you have a message, you have things to say and to be done and to propose in the cities to your visitors and to your citizens of the city. And Google does not know how to do this because they're too global, in fact. And so we know how to be specific to the city's needs, so that the city themselves can deal with their own needs and their own types of communication and their own services for their citizens. We can think in material means. In other words, the city is going to be able to control their own means and their own messages, and Google cannot control that because it's too global. So if the city does not take into consideration what the force and the strength of different groups like Google, when their impact upon the world and their impact on our traditional means of media, and also on the postering, then of course we're going to see that the different publicity panels will no longer be able to finance anything, whether it's going to be the taxes or the services or even whatever could be proposed through the posters. So we're dealing with the city services themselves. It has to be regulated. It has to produce financing for the city, for the public authorities. I think we've got to take away all of these different illegal posters. I think we've gone through some of the biggest struggle. And so I think now we've got to have a very attractive offer once we have taken down these other paper posters, and then we have to make a good offer for the cities at the digital level. Well, we have to end our conversation soon. So what are the biggest challenges for us? Well, I think the challenges, we've already seen them. Well, yes, in terms of innovation, like a group such as yours, I would say that the orientation in the African cities, I think the organization of trafficking in some of these cities, in other words, before, having public toilets, we didn't have any. And before having bicycles, we didn't have bicycles. So you understand that if we're going to produce public toilets, for instance, we have to somehow meet the needs of the cities that are defined by the cities. Sometimes we have brought lighting structures to different neighborhoods that didn't have any lights. So we did this in Nairobi, for instance. And so this was one of the projects that was being promoted by our group. In Madrid, sometimes we accumulate some of the different for instance, the small forms of brands that are included, and we create different green spaces in the city. This is one of the city services that we were able to realize in Madrid. So what we can do is simply to help the different cities better regulate their different spaces, and I think there's room for everyone, of course, in this area, but I think we do have to insist on regulations. You're already intervening in how many African cities? I believe that we are already intervening in 21 different countries, and we're already setting up our different services in 7 cities. And I believe that most of the cities are interested in the system. We already began our services in Libreville a few months ago, but we can see that there are important needs that we have to meet, and I think that we're still going to tolerate, but I believe that during the past 3 days of debates here, I think that we're looking at the future of this African continent, and we thank you very much for your very innovative ideas. Thank you very much.